Welcome to this part of my Voltage Modular series. Today I'm not talking about a single module, but about a whole bunch of modules, all crafted after the FORMANT do-it-yourself project, which the electronic magazine ELEKTOR started in 1977 and finished a year later. The developer, Request for Music, has produced this series of modules for Voltage Modular, and this first video about the, let me call it, Voltage Modular format is only a rather short one, just an overview. More and deeper videos are to come. And I'm going to talk only about those modules which were part of the original series of 1977-78. Request for Music has created a bunch of additional modules which are crafted following, let me say, the spirit of the original format, but were not available back in the days. These additional modules will be the topic of later videos in this series. To understand the importance of the FORMANT project and the fascination that came from it, we must look at the historical context in which ELEKTOR magazine published its do-it-yourself article series. Let me draw a rough timeline of modular synthesizers. It was in the year 1963 when Don Buchla made the Buchla music box, also called Buchla System 100. About a year later, in October 1964, Robert Moog came out with his first take on modular synths, which got its wide recognition when Wendy Carlos published her famous Switched on Bach album, which was performed and recorded on the Moog Modular in 1968. 1 year later, in 1969, EMS launched its VCS3 synthesizer, perhaps better known as the Putney. Again, 1 year later, in 1970, Moog came out with its probably most famous, even if not modular, synthesizer, the Mini Moog. In the same year, 1970, Buchla's Big Series 200 modular synth appeared on the market, and Alan R. Perlman produced its first ARP 2500, followed by the smaller and cheaper ARP 2600 semi-modular in 1971, and followed again by the Buchla Series 500, a plethora of modular synthesizers in those days. Modular synthesizers were the dream machines of a whole generation of electronic musicians like Rick Wakeman, bands like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Tangerine Dream were using them. Modular synths seemed to be the non plus ultra of music making, unreachable for legions of young musicians who hardly knew how to make a living from their musical work. But that was not all. Also, in 1971, in May, the EMS Synthi A appeared on the market, and 1 year later the EMS Synthi AKS, one of Brian Eno's early love. Moog continued developing, and in 1973 they brought their System 55, which was produced until 1981. And also in 1973 Roland gave its debut, the SH1000, not a modular but Roland's way of testing the synth market. Buchla answered ARP's idea of making a smaller modular system by developing the Music Easel. Again, it was 1973. Then Roland did a huge jump in 1976. Roland's System 700 was a monster of a modular synthesizer. In 1978, Korg started selling its MS-10 and MS-20. And 1 year later, in 1979, Roland surprised with the System 100M, a modular synth system which was so unique that the film music composer Hans Zimmer bought all available modules of this system from Roland in the 1980s. All in all, 148 modules. And just in between 1976 and 1978, the ELEKTOR do-it-yourself series FORMANT music synthesizer got published, and all of a sudden these dream machines seemed to have come in financial reach of even hobby electronic musicians. I remember it very well, and even today a bit of a shudder of excitement runs along my spine when I think of this wow experience I got when holding the first issue of the magazine in my hand, which opened the Formant series. I had worked with modular synths before, but they were not mine. I had to ask and to convince and to beg and so on always when I thought to need such a machine, but now it seemed I would soon have one of my own. Well, I would not in the end. My soldering skills were far less developed than my musical skills, and the big G's, girls and grass, were a lot easier to handle anyway. And now here it reappears again, the Formant in Voltage Modular. At least the looks are fantastic, and so let's find out about the functionality and the sound.
These are the modules of the original series from 1977, 1978. It's a VCO, 3 different filters, an ADSR, VCA, 3 LFOs, so 1 LFO module containing 3 LFOs, noise and sample and hold module, and the so-called COM module, which is basically a 3-band equalizer with volume control. The functionality of each of these modules is quite self-explanatory, and daily bread and butter, daily bread for today's synthesists. And so I can do away with it rather quickly and focus on the sound then. Just don't forget to activate the external here, the external 1 volt per octave pitch modulation if you want to modulate and adjust the pitch of the VCO from external sources. You see here a sync input, which you don't see, or which you haven't seen on the graphics before, and this is because it's a newer version of the VCO here, which arrived just now, and I had already constructed the graphics. So this oscillator sync, hard sync to be precise, is new in the latest version now.
Let's listen to the sound of the module and its waves now. There were no 2 synths of the same kind which really sounded the same back in the early analog days, not even with the industrially manufactured brands. And this is valid the more with a do-it-yourself synthesizer like the Formant machine. Different people with different levels of skills build quite different sounding machines. Please keep that in mind when listening to and looking at the spectra and wave shapes I'm going to demonstrate now. By the way, the photographs show the developer's own do-it-yourself Formant synthesizer. Thank you, Hans, for sending them to me.
So, let's have a look at the waves and the sound in a bit more detailed way now. At first here the saw wave, and let's try different octaves. The ramp now. Nice bass. What about the square wave? Quite clean so far. Triangle. And sine. Okay, now some combinations. So let's say sine and yeah, nice. I'm always fascinated by the pictures, not only by the sound. Without the sine wave, there's not that much of a difference in the sound, but here it's more remarkable. So no, let's make it a little bit smaller. Doesn't work. It's the smallest already. All right. And now adding a triangle. And now with the sine. Yeah, that's a nice gnarling bass. And now R5. Okay. The sine wave brings a lot of energy without increasing the volume. So you have to take care, or we have to take care when mixing later. All right.
The Formant had a 12 dB VCF and a so-called 24 dB VCF, which could be switched to 6, 12, 18 and 24 dB. Here in the Voltage Modular version it's a bit different. We have the 24 dB filter, which can be switched between 12 and 24 dB with the button next to the output, and a filter which can be set to 6, 12, 24 and 30 decibel per octave. Both filter modules have 3 inputs for external cutoff frequency modulation with attenuators, and the upper input is called ENV, envelope, and its attenuator is the red ENV knob. The input below is labeled external, EXT, and must be activated by pushing the button below. Its attenuator is the green knob labeled TM, which has also an input of its own. We can combine, that's important, the filter types, high pass, band pass and low pass, by pushing the corresponding buttons at the bottom of the module, or we can switch the module off by switching off all of them.
So what's the difference between the 3 modulation inputs now? The external input here and above the envelope input both allow modulating the cutoff frequency around the manually adjusted value, manually adjusted with the octave knob here, at slightly different ranges though between these 2 inputs. And the TM here, the TM input, TM stands for tone modulation, modulates the adjusted cutoff frequency itself. So this frequency here itself, around which then the other modulations coming in from the envelope and the external can do their work. And if I want the external input, the external modulation input to work, I have to take care that this LED is switched on and it's lit. Here in this example, the upper LFO, this one, it's the slower one, pushes the cutoff frequency, the cutoff center frequency to and fro. You see it comes in here into the TM input, whereas the lowest and fastest, this one here, the lowest and fastest LFO modulates the cutoff frequency around this slowly changing cutoff frequency, center cutoff frequency. And you see with the signal analyzer, you don't only hear, but you can see it on the signal analyzer, how the upper LFO, the slowest one, modulates slowly the that what I have adjusted here, whereas the faster ones modulate around the actual center frequency at each given moment.
There's a third filter module called RFM, what stands for Resonant Filter Module. There are 3 parallel bandpass filters with adjustable center frequencies, bandwidth and amplitude. The center frequency can be CV modulated. The outputs of each of these 3 filter bands are added at the module's output. In the original article, they write that this module is meant to make certain sounds more, let's say, similar to traditional acoustic instruments, but it's capable of doing a lot more, as we will see a bit later in this video. Only a quick and simple demonstration shall be enough for now. It's great and wonderful that you like my work, my ebooks, my videos, my production. Alright then, come and earn some money together with me. Simply join my affiliate program. It's really easy, it's simple, it's without any obligations, and it might be even fun for you. Read the details on my website and start earning money, and not even a little only. Just click the link down in the description to learn more about it. I'm looking forward to meeting you there. Cheers and peace.
Alright, let me mess around a bit with the RFM module. At the moment it's on and I can bypass it here. So now no filtering, but let's put it on again. And I've set the center frequencies of the 3 frequency bands all to middle position, 12 o'clock position, and the filter Q, the width of the band, as widest as possible. And now I add one band after the other to the sound. And with that, changing now the filter Q. Now I have all 3 resonances, filter Qs, to its maximum, bandwidth at its minimum, and all 3 bands at the same center frequency. And now let me change this. Change the bandwidth a bit. And modulate. Modulate the different band frequencies. And with the right knobs here, I can adjust the share which each band has in the output. Alright.
The LFO module contains 3 independent LFOs, the upper 2 of which are identical. All 3 LFOs offer 3 different wave outputs which can be used at the same time. All in all, we have 9 LFO wave shapes on offer. That's a lot. The rate of the 3 LFOs can be adjusted individually but cannot be CV modulated, and so we get, all in all, we get 2 times square, triangle and sawtooth, and with the lower LFO, sawtooth, ramp and triangle wave shapes. A first little patch shows the LFOs in action.
Alright, so what do we have here? We have the VCO, the VCF and the RFM as sound modules, and the LFO as a central modulator here, and I use more than only one wave this time. So the first upper LFO here modulates the center frequency of the band, which I have adjusted here with a quite high filter Q and a big share on the sound with this white volume knob. The middle LFO, it's running a bit faster, modulates the VCFs, center frequency, the cutoff frequency, and it also modulates, as you see here, the blue cable, the pulse width of the VCO. And the lower and fastest LFO modulates with its triangle wave, the middle band here, middle because it's in the middle of the module. Indeed, it's a quite high center frequency. Again, a rather high filter Q, and let's say a middle output adjustment. So the share of this band is not that high as this one. And the ramp, it's a ramp, yeah, and the ramp wave modulates the last band, the deep one, which are quite really high filter Q here, and a big share on the whole sound. Let's listen to it a bit. All right.
The VCA module is also quite self-explanatory, but for one certain constellation, which we will see later. The simple things first. When the LED is not lit, it's again a button which we can switch on and off. The signal which is patched in the PN jack is attenuated according to the manual settings at the gain knob. With the drive, we can add a couple of more partials to the sound. The in jack is equipped with an attenuator, the black knob below the jack. And we can CD modulate the VCA using the AM input jack and its bipolar attenuator.
So far the basics of the module. The signals which are fed in the input jack here are without any effect when the LED here, here of course, when the LED here is lit. Because this jack here is meant to receive envelope CV, and has to be activated by pushing the CD, making the CD light up. Doing so, as it's right now, switches the gain knob off. Let me switch the LED off, and now the gain knob regulates the volume. Switching it on, nothing. So let me patch an envelope in. And now the envelope is deactivated, the influence of the envelope, and now it's modulating the VCA. When there is a zero signal, or a zero level, at both knobs and the LED is lit, the module goes silent. And when I say it on both input jacks, this means I can, the envelope, for example, patch into the AM modulation input jack, and now I have the constellation that I can attenuate the influence of the envelope. I can edit. The envelope now adds to the adjusted gain here. And what it adds is the envelope itself, the original envelope as it is right now, adjusted here. And when I turn the knob to the other side, it's the inverted envelope Don't forget, remember that this knob here is bipolar. Of course, we can use both modulations at the same time. Let me do so. Now the envelope modulation, and I use an LFO. Or the square wave. Or the saw wave. I like it more with a triangle. Imagine a bit of reverb, and there will be a lot of reverb in the next video, and we get a quite nice pattern already.
The ADSR module doesn't need any further explanation, nor does the COM module, which is basically a 3-band equalizer with master volume. It's meant to give the sound a final roundup at the end of the audio chain. The last module I'm going to talk about today is the noise and sample and hold module. The module delivers white noise and pink noise, and at the rightmost output we can get random CV levels of the sample and hold functionality of the module. The knob sets the rate, the frequency at which the samples are taken, which is the rate at which the voltage levels at the sample and hold output changes. There is a CV input jack labeled external EXT above the rate knob. Here we can set the rate externally, for example using the square output of an LFO or the trigger or gate output of a sequencer.
Before I continue, please have a look at this. It's my new online course, Production Secrets of Generative Music with Modular Synths, and it's useful not only for making generative music. You can get it from my website. The link is down in the description. Thank you for visiting it. A quick little patch shall demonstrate all this. What do we have here? We have the VCO sending its output to a VCF, and from there going to the other filter, the resonant filter module here, and from there to the VCA, which is volume modulated by the ADSR. The gate from the ADSR comes from the upper LFO here. And the upper LFO also triggers the sample process of the noise and sample and hold module, and the output of the sample and hold module, so the CV, the random CV, goes back to the VCO, modulating its pitch. So the same LFO, which opens the gate of the ADSR, triggers the noise module. And now I remove this patch cable, and now I can set the rate at which the samples are taken with this knob here. And of course, when the rate is slower than the LFO's rate, then we get repeated pitches, of course. And when it's the other way around, we get different pitches, pitch succession, the pitch development at each opening of the ADSR. And I can do the same with using another LFO. So I have different rates for opening the ADSR and for triggering the sample and hold functionality of this module here. Okay, as a little preview of what is to come in the following videos about this Formant bundle, a little factory preset. It's called Keith, and you will at once discover where the name is based on when I start playing.
Alright, end of this video. Be prepared for a couple of more and really in-depth reviews and larger patch examples of this bundle of modules, which points to a rather magic part of the past of modular synthesis. Subscribe and turn the bell on so you won't miss anything on this channel, and don't forget to visit my website from time to time. There's always something new to discover there, and you can grab some real bargains as well at my site. Thanks for watching, cheers and peace.